Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, and tonight I'm joined by my disease-free co-host, Aaron Quinn. How we doing?
Oh, I'll knock on wood, man. You never know these days.
Yeah. How's your incubation period coming?
Yeah, no, I want to be doing great. Our team's 4-0, and I did so much research last night. I stayed up late watching all 22 of the Titans. I was getting ready.
I was all afraid of Derrick Henry.
Yeah, we talked about it Sunday, like, hey, we just got to get through these couple days, and then it's game on, and then everything came crashing down this morning. So
yeah, for anyone who isn't aware or hasn't been living on Twitter, we did have 2 days, as Aaron and I said Sunday night after the game. We were kind of at that tipping point that if we didn't have any more positive tests, we were going to be in good shape. We were going to have the game, and on Monday and Tuesday, back-to-back days, we had 0 positive tests from the Titans. It seemed like it was under control. Things were going smoothly. All of a sudden today, we got a couple more tests that came in. At least one more with Corey Davis. There's another one that's being reviewed that the name hasn't been released yet, and some other interesting reports. So in preparation for this game, we were very excited to bring on one of our Cover One compadres, who is one of the best draft analysts out there and also happens to be a Tennessee Titans fan, Christian Page. Christian, how we doing?
Man, I wish I could be saying I was doing pretty well, but we're still talking football, and I appreciate the accolades there for the intro. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to ask, just honestly, and I know you're not always living and breathing in Twitter like some people do, but what is the Titans fan base like right now? I've seen a lot of, honestly, some insecurity and defensiveness and frustration. What's it like in the Titans fan base right now?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I don't want to say a lot of people are playing the fence. I guess I kind of am, but it's just like, hey, if you want to play football games, you got to get your you-know-what together, because it's just, I mean, that's plain and simple. That's what it is, especially now the Titans. I mean, they had kind of a comeback win versus Minnesota. They're rolling in 3-0 with probably the best matchup of the weekend. Let's be honest, 2 undefeated teams with a lot of steam going into this weekend. And then Tennessee, this was kind of a way for them to, like, hey, maybe they haven't beaten the upper echelon type of opponents. Maybe Buffalo could say the same thing. So this was where we're really going to see 2 kind of, I don't want to say juggernauts quite yet, but 2 definite playoff teams battle it out. But as far as the fan base goes, I don't know if all of them see eye to eye in that way. And some are like, I mean, I don't want to bring politics into it, but it's your everyday life, and that carries over to the fan base. Some agree with the idea, and they see, Vrabel as this badass type coach, which he is. But then that also comes with, like, COVID has taken over this country and the world. So you just have to play, you have to play your cards right. And so I don't know. I can't speak on behalf of all the Titans fans, but it's kind of split down the middle. But I think either way, how you look at it, people are going to be very disappointed when there's not a game this weekend.
Yeah. Now, I got a question for you, whether or not the game happens, right? We were looking forward to this game as a good measuring stick, right? We had the Rams. That was a good measuring stick for the Bills. They ended up that was a weird game in how that finished. I was looking for this as within the AFC, this is going to be a good measuring stick. But also, last time these 2 teams met, it was a really ugly game, right? It was not a good game. But then the Titans turned their entire season around after that game, right? That was the game that got Mariota benched. Everything totally turned around for the Tennessee Titans. Do you think, both internally and in the fan base, you guys maybe were looking forward to this game more, not just because of the 2020 Bills are a good measuring stick, but because how that game went last year, and you didn't have that team that you had put together towards the end of the year and could really come back and kind of get a revenge win on the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, I didn't really think about that. So I guess maybe a good omen and maybe a different type of perspective, just depending on how you're looking at it. But yeah, maybe so. I mean, Tannehill takes over, and they're just they were a rejuvenated team after that. And so, maybe that is something that you look at. I haven't even put 2 and 2 together, but that definitely is something that, I mean, heck, more bulletin board material, more motivation that you can have. I definitely think that something that may come into fact.
Well, I know a couple of pieces. We'll take a look at some of the areas and get Christian back in here. I know that, last year in that game, the field goal kicking was an issue. And it's funny because it really hasn't been solved this year. And it's
been up and down, right?
Yeah, they're struggling with that again. And you're talking about a guy that has an amazing history from a kicking standpoint. I think we got Christian back here. Chris, we were just talking about how last year in the game, it was obviously had a great deal to do with the kicking and the misses that were there. And this year, I think there was a thought that, okay, we got this kind of solidified, and there's been a couple hiccups in the kicking game again. Where is that from a confidence standpoint?
I guess it's kind of worked itself out. I mean, you saw Gostkowski in that week 1 game versus Denver, and it was a disaster. And, fortunately for him, he was able to redeem himself, get the game-winning field goal, and he's kind of figured it out since then. But you go from, Ryan Suckup a year ago, the long time, and actually Mr. Relevant, probably one of the more important Mr. Relevance in the history of the NFL draft. But now he's on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He went on IR last year. So, it's just something, how you play the cards. The NFL's a business. That's the right strategy that they had to take. But I think with Gostkowski, though, I think now maybe he's figured it out. He had to knock a little bit of rust off. But again, at the end of the day, NFL not for long. His job was looking really thin after that week 1 game. But again, he was able to redeem himself, and he's looked pretty good since then.
That's good. That's good. Now, getting into some of the actual matchups here, my biggest fear is that, we're in a new world as Bills fans. We're used to these knockdown, drag out games where we got to keep it close and hope we can make a play, but the defense is going to keep them in games. Now we have this high flying offense, one of the highest scoring in the NFL. Our defense can't really control anyone. And one of the biggest fears, it subsided a bit in the Vegas game where we were worried about Josh Jacobs, but we kept it under control. But against the Rams, I was really nervous about the way that Darrell Henderson gashed him. And obviously Derrick Henry is a completely different animal. He's not that, fast player from an absolute acceleration standpoint, but he does have that one cut ability. And when he gets going downhill, missed tackles have been the bugaboo for the Bills. And if you're going to miss tackles on anybody, Derrick Henry is not a pleasant guy to bring down. How has he looked this year? I know last year he got started a little bit slow and really came on. How has that been looking? And obviously I'm assuming that's going to be the centerpiece of the offense whenever we do see this game.
Yeah, absolutely. The Titans predicate their offense off play action pass, and to have a relevant play action pass offense, got to be able to consistently run the football. And they maybe haven't done that to the extent of what they did last year, especially in that second half of the season. But I feel like that's always been the narrative of Derrick Henry in this power type running situation, where that second half of the season, they just take off, they figure out everything on the offensive front, and then they go forward and they really accentuate that offense there. So, I mean, he's looked fine. I mean, the best that he could. I mean, they faced some okay defenses along the way, but you really have to, I guess in a way, put the pressure on him now because a lot of receivers are out. Jonnu Smith went down with an injury. Taylor Lewan's still working his way back in there. So Derrick Henry, I mean, he got the big contract this offseason. So we'll definitely see, not necessarily what he's made of, but when the pressure's on his shoulders, it'll definitely need to come to fruition here entering, week 4, week 5, whenever the Titans get back on the field.
I'm glad you brought up how it really revolves around the play action pass, because that's what I saw watching the last couple of games for the Titans. Was not so much, obviously Derrick Henry scares me. I'm not going to say that isn't what scares me, but what does scare me is the Bills got beat, in that Rams game on the play action pass, because I do think Sean McDermott's a smart guy. They're going to sell out for the run, a little bit here with Derrick Henry, and they did a pretty good job containing him for the most part in that last matchup a year ago. The play action pass, what are you seeing out of this offense running with Ryan Tannehill? And he's been dropping some dimes. I know that you're mentioning some of the receivers and pass catchers aren't healthy, but they're getting wide open, and he is dropping dimes in this play action game, and his legs allow him to kind of break out. What is that stress on defenses that you're seeing? Because they're putting up points at a pretty big clip that we're not used to the Titans doing. Oh, did we lose him? We might have lost Christian again.
It's all right. Yeah,
that's all right. So, yeah, I mean, that was something watching film. Obviously, I agree with you. I'm scared of Derrick Henry, but I'm a little bit terrified of I do think they're going to game plan a lot to kind of stop that run, and getting beat in the play action game is something that's scary. Hey, there he is again.
Try it one more time here.
Hey, bud. So I don't know if you heard anything I was saying there. Oh, all right. We might have to move on from.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's a part of technology today. It happens to me at work all the time. But being able to look at it, I think people see, our two questions I think lead into exactly what people maybe lean a little bit more towards that first question. They think it's all ground and pound, just trying to plug away at this old school 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. And really, I mean, they were one of the most aggressive downfield passing teams in the NFL last year. Tannehill got right back into that this year. They run a ton of play action, set him up really well. He's not maybe on the torrid pace that he had last year where he was, an analytics marvel in how consistently he was hitting. And for as excited fans are for Josh Allen this year, Ryan Tannehill honestly wasn't far off of what Josh Allen is doing from an efficiency and a deep ball accuracy and the touchdown rate kind of numbers that we're seeing. That's the kind of season Tannehill had last year. He's not at that pace this year, but he's still hitting some of those deep shots. And obviously we've seen that can be a concern. And I think it's interesting, almost similar to the Vegas game. If we had seen the full health Titans where it was AJ Brown and Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, and heck, if this game gets rescheduled for some yet to be determined week 18 game or something that we don't even know about, maybe we'll see that. But if they play this week, not having that full complement will certainly be a challenge.
It will. And something that really stood out to me in preparation for this game. So like before we've talked about before I dig into the film, I take a look at the analytics, the DVOAs, where everybody's ranked. I take a look at their PFF, everything, and then kind of dive into the film. And the DVOA really spoke through on the film. Right now, Tennessee is ranked 20th in the run. So I agree sort of what Christian's saying. It's not as efficient as it's been in the past. And I do probably expect that to pick up as the year goes on. But they're 5th in the pass. And when you look at the Bills and everybody's talking about this high-flying Bills offense, I think Bills are making more of the big splash plays that are sexy and exciting. Tennessee's 5th. They're right there on the heels of the Bills in the passing game, and they just missed a game. So the DVOA doesn't account for a game that they didn't even play. Who knows what happens in the game against Pittsburgh? That could probably go either way. That could have probably been a negative for them. Pittsburgh's got a pretty stingy defense. But anyway, I think it's hard to think about because when you automatically think about the Titans, you think about Derrick Henry. And I think for years, Bills fans have just thought of Ryan Tannehill as a mediocre to bad quarterback who couldn't lead a good passing attack. But the numbers show it, and then the film goes and shows it too, that they are a dangerous team through the air. And we've seen now last week, the Bills are starting to give up some of these big games to passers and big toxic differential plays that we're not used to this Bills team doing. And you have Levi Wallace out this week. No idea what's going on with Trey. He missed a practice. I'm not sure if that's an actual injury. Yeah, they said it's a back. Who knows what's going on with that?
Hopefully not.
I don't like it. Again, we don't know if we're playing this game this week or not, but the Titans passing game is a little bit right now what scares me a little bit more, but obviously it is predicated off the run.
Yeah. And let's get into the reason that we're not sure for a moment here. For anyone who's listened, I think Aaron and I have been pretty consistent all week on Twitter that, this is a pandemic going on around the world. I'm not interested in punishing people for getting sick about, the pandemic. However, what the information that's come out in the last day or so, that it seems like there has been a pretty significant disregard for the testing protocols, for this, the distancing. After they shut down the facility, they specifically warned all the players not to get together and to gather. And it looks like now there's video or pictures of them getting together at a local high school. There's just been several different pieces where it's to the point that the NFL has requested the video surveillance from within their facility to test and to check, are they actually using those proximity meters? Are they keeping everything in the way that they designed? Because the only way this works is if people actually follow the protocol. You can't kind of do this, genuine compliance to this, and the flippant response that we've seen from them, and especially the players responding on Twitter today,
that's
has
what
been
set me
really
off, yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah, I've been pretty consistent and like, all right, we're not going to punish people. This is going to happen. NFL knew this was going to happen. We're going to have outbreaks on teams. Then when we saw the news that, we're getting more test results, that seemed weird. And we saw, oh, hey, these guys met. Okay, like I get it. Young guys, competitive guys. All right. But then players attacking the reporters, reporting on it, and then coming out and saying, oh, you can't prove it's us, just shows, to me at least, more of a cultural within the organization lack and disregard of what's going on. And that is what bothers me, because you're putting the livelihoods of everyone in the league, the entire league, in jeopardy for your own selfish behavior. And so that put me over the top. I'm done with the Titans. I do hope that they get harshly punished. I hope the league is pretty swift in it here with the next few days. I think it's taken too long so far to even start to hand down punishments. I know they probably want to get the full investigation together. I get that. I want to see something happen quick. I want to see something happen pretty decisively here, because we've seen now a number of other teams have render some positive tests. We're not really sure what's going on with New England. That could break out here in the next day or two.
Now it's being reported that not the reason, but maybe not a coincidence that on Friday night, Cam Newton and Stephon Gilmore had dinner together.
Yes.
Now Friday night would mean that was prior to any positive test. The Cam Newton results didn't come out until Saturday.
Yes,
so I don't want to be, it
wasn't Stephon Gilmore being
correct. That doesn't mean they were being irresponsible after knowing. It's just unfortunate. However, that means that Stephon Gilmore very, very likely played that game while positive
and traveled with the team,
on the plane, in the meetings and walkthroughs, on the field, hugging Patrick Mahomes after the game. And that was a great example that everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's the face of the league. He also has a pregnant wife. And that's the kind of thing that we disconnect these, people that we root for on the field from being human beings that have, Trey White wasn't thinking and pondering sitting out the season because he wasn't tough enough to make it, or because he was worried he might not survive. It's because he has elderly parents and he has a very close-knit family that he's around all the time. And he wasn't sure if he wanted to risk not being able to see that and having to quarantine himself from a much of his extended nuclear family that he likes to see. These are people that we watch every day in these uniforms.
Yeah. And Sean McDermott brought up a great point today when the entire conference today was COVID talk and Tennessee Titans talk. And he even said, like, it's one thing, like, every day they're trying to get better, right? People are making mistakes. Like, even in the Bills building, where I think they're taking things very seriously. I think they see the rules and they try to apply the rules. And he even said, like, hey, we've made mistakes. We're trying to get better every day. And I think if teams are doing those things, I'm with you, man. Like, mistakes are going to happen. Yeah. Human error is going to happen. Things are going to happen. But this seems to kind of go beyond that. With the Titans. And even if New England has an outbreak, again, like you said, I don't think there was any total disregard of the policies and things that were in place, where with Tennessee, that's what we're seeing. So I don't know what the punishment is going to be, but right now I do feel bad for the Bills players, staff, and everybody, because Tim Graham said it best. It's like they're playing Minesweeper with COVID. I mean, everywhere that they're playing, going to play has been in some type of contact. We saw Raiders, who they just played days ago, bring a positive test. Luckily, we haven't seen any further positive tests from them. Who knows how that is going to go, but that's got to be weighing on these players' minds. Then you have Titans, who are about to play, maybe are having more positive tests. Then now KC has been in contact with a team that is rendering some positive tests. So it is surrounding this Bills organization right now. And I'll tell you what, fans, I've never been happier. We talk about the culture of the Buffalo Bills building and the people that they have in place in that building. And I couldn't be happier that we have Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and the core of people they have in place, because adversity, you're talking about adversity happen throughout the year. This is it, folks. This is adversity. And I think that they can keep this team focused, and no matter what waves and different types of things come at this team, I think that they're going to stay focused and stay within the protocols and do what's right.
I want to credit a really well said tweet from our friend Sal Capaccio. Talked about the exact same thing you just did, and that, when people talk about some things that can seem nerdy or overboard or unnecessary, that diligence and discipline and structure is why we haven't seen any of those things, and why they've been able to control all of this is that they don't mess around. They're not lax with anything. They are incredibly structured and documented and disciplined in everything that they do. Now, that comes out in many of the positive things that we see on the football field, but you don't think about it in things like this, where they don't mess around with who has access to the facility and who is doing the proper steps and where you're tracking everyone's, distance from everyone. Those things matter. And in times like this, we're really fortunate to have this. So really well said by you. I think that that's a great way to look at it. A couple quick scenarios for people that have been asking. to be able to play this game, they have to have 2 consecutive days with no positive tests to even be allowed back into the facility. They would then need continued days with no positive tests to practice in those days and then play a game. So right now, the earliest it could possibly be is Monday. Right now, there's actually, as far as I understand, there's no scenario where the game could be on Sunday because they would need to have 2 more days with no tests, and then 2 more days in the facility practicing with no tests. That's 4 days. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So to get to that point, we're already at Monday. If you get to Monday, the Bills have a Thursday night game. So now you're talking about moving 2 games to be able to have that. I feel very, very low percentage chance that we're going to see a Titans-Bills game in week 5.
I agree, because also you're going to have the players' union. I mean, the players have to have practices of some sort before a game. So you have to have sign-on from the players' union in that regard. And then you end up sort of punishing the Bills if you move their schedule to a Monday and then they have to go and play KC whenever you get it. I guess it would be another Monday or
back-to-back Monday night games.
So it punishes the Bills because the Tennessee Titans going to get it together. So it's tough, right? And I think you said it really well on the Slack channel. Like, I think we're beyond the point here with the 2020 season. I want to stress it's all because of the Tennessee Titans. We're beyond the point of what's fair and what's not. And I don't want to get into the argument of forfeiting or if that's okay with me or not, but I think we are beyond the point of what's fair because definitely the Titans shouldn't get the benefit of the doubt, and the other teams that are going to be potentially penalized for it shouldn't be penalized for it. And you have a team like the Bills, who I think genuinely in that building believe that this is a Super Bowl caliber team, that this is a team that could make a special run to the Super Bowl. You're throwing a big wrench in the system just by having this right now and having to have these team meetings on a Wednesday instead of talking about the Titans. And they say the building's fully focused on the Titans, but these are human beings. There's no way that the players are 100% locked into the Titans. They're on Twitter scrolling around for this stuff too. So you're throwing a lot of wrenches into the system. We're beyond. I guess my point is we are beyond the point, I think, for the remainder of the season here of fair, because this isn't going to be the only game that gets canceled. There's going to be a lot of ripple effects from this potential forfeiture or delaying it and postponing it to another time. I don't know what all the scenarios are, but there's a lot of ripples that come out of this.
Yeah, and obviously the one scenario where it could happen this week is if we have those 4 days I talked about. So 2 days of no positive tests. They get into the facility on Saturday and Sunday with 2 consecutive days of no more positive tests, as well as no positive tests the 5th day, the morning of Monday. They play the game Monday. Or Tuesday. I know they talked about the KC New England game. They debated doing it on Tuesday. They could want to see an extra day of no positive tests, I suppose. In which case, then you're already moving the Chiefs Bills game, which means maybe no Thursday night game. You're moving that into the following Monday, likely, and then going into the Jets game after that. So if we do that, I think you're talking about a competitive disadvantage for the Bills. I think Bills fans need to be like every other fan base. There could be scenarios where fairness is not, on board, just like you said. We're already talking about some stadiums have fans, some don't. There's other competitive inequalities already out there. There are some things I know a lot of people are very quick to go to the forfeit target. I understand why people go to that. I also want to temper people's expectations. We are already talking about a revenue-starved season. We are already talking about a great deal of gaps in the salary cap because of how short they are in revenue. If you forfeit a game, that's a really slippery slope with marketing and ad revenue and sponsorships that have already been prepaid, that now are you going to give back that money? Are you going to refund that money and now take further dip out of there? Now,
game checks?
How do you handle game checks for the players and for the other teams? If the Titans forfeit, do the Bills get their game checks, but the Titans don't? Does that count against the salary cap? There's just a lot of complications that go much, much further than just, oh, screw them, we got to penalize them, they have to forfeit, the Bills are 5-0. Now, don't get me wrong, competitively, if we can have a 5-0 start to the season and an extra week off to go into that KC game and then kind of another mini bye going into the Jets, sign me up. I'll take it all day. I need to warn people. I think I'll say this even further. I think there's almost no chance that they announce a forfeit right now. I think it could be an indefinitely deferred game with a plan to make it up at some point. And then if they can't make it up, they would be forced to forfeit at that point, or to see, they've done this in baseball previously, depending on if it comes into play in playoff scenarios and where things are, is whether you make it up or not. I threw out a scenario, and I'll ask you what you think here. I actually think the NFL as a whole right now should add an 18th and 19th week. I think we should bump back the playoffs 2 weeks. So the wild card would be 2 weeks later, and then run everything else 2 weeks later than it's planned, and build that 2 week cushion, because I'm concerned this won't be the last one that we see. I hope that the Titan scenario scares everyone into compliance, and that they give such a painful draconian penalty for the Titans that nobody else will go astray of it. But I'm nervous. What if this isn't the last one and they need that 2 week cushion to schedule these other deferred games into? I think they need to go down a path like that to create it.
Yeah, I've sort of had that in my mind for a while, that they should just do that. But again, there's no fair scenario, right? Like if the Bills have to play a game against the Titans, it's going to be a tough matchup right before they go into the playoffs, because
that could very easily be a playoff preview playing back-to-back weeks.
Correct. And you go from playing, the Dolphins to end the year. And in my mind, we've got the division locked up. And then, but now you're adding a game against the Titans, who might be playing for a playoff spot. And, even if you're rolling out your backups, it's going to be a tough game. And then you got other teams maybe that are heading into playoffs, that are going to get 2 weeks off with. I'm not sure if that's a benefit or not in the NFL. I don't know. There's a lot of scenarios. But I do think they have to put some type of buffer in here, because even if teams are doing the right things, I think that there's just as good of a chance right now that the Patriots do have an outbreak here midweek and start to roll in some positive tests. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not going to tell you for certain that we're going to see anything come from that, but just what we know and how things have gone, I think there's a likelihood that we could get more tests coming in there. And at this point with this Titans game, man, even if they do the 4 days and get things right, can they even field 48-man roster? Like, don't some of these guys need a full
genuine,
10
not a
day?
guarantee.
Like, I don't know that they can. So even if they do that, we might not still be able to have a game. And the players union is not going to allow, even if it's like on the 48 exact, that might be tough. So I think they should build that in a little bit and maybe push the dates back on the playoffs and the Super Bowl a little bit, just in caution. And then at the end of the year, if all you have to do is make up one game, fantastic. But you might have a whole slate of games for a couple of weeks at the end of the year. We don't know at this point.
Yeah. So a couple different scenarios that got thrown out. I know our friend over at 26 Shirts, Del Reed, threw out that fans might need to brace themselves for a win percentage at the end of the season. That hey, it's maybe this game doesn't get played, and if the Bills have 15 games, another team has 14 games, another team has 16 games. Maybe you just do the seeding based off win percentage instead of the traditional record. I know there was a scenario that Jeremy White over at WGR threw out, that if the Patriots game also got canceled or deferred and they couldn't play, that they're playing the Broncos, the Bills are playing the Titans. Later on in the season, the Bills and the Broncos play. So you could bring that Bills-Broncos game up. That would have had to have been announced today if they were going to do anything crazy like that. And then all of a sudden you build in a slot where later on in the season you could play Bills-Titans in that later game window. So I actually thought it's a little too many moving parts to do that. But I thought it was a creative solution, that it's actually something that like, oh, that is interesting. And I see it more as a good thought exercise that, hey, something crazy like that may be needed at some point. I don't know that it's going to happen this week, but just some different things I saw floating around today that were interesting.
Yeah, I think the NFL is going to have to get creative at some point too, because the deeper we get into this season, the harder it is going to be to kind of shift some of this stuff around. And one point, this point here that you actually brought up is something I have a tough time with this one, to be honest with you. I don't know that there's I get the idea that there's this a kind of a bye and we get to start focusing on the Chiefs. It's a pandemic. I have a hard time still in a global pandemic looking at that and saying like this is some type of advantage for the team, because Brandon Beane's been running around like crazy today. The Bills front office has been running around like crazy today. Players are panicked. I don't think that we think about these guys as tough warriors that just keep going and sliding through, but don't be fooled that these guys are panicked. I don't know that they just jump right into the Chiefs here this week. I think they will try to, but I'm not sure that there's some huge advantage to the Bills. And also, we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know that there's any type of advantage you can get. I mean, we've all seen the film. I'm not sure
they're terrifying.
More film work's going to make the Bills perform better against them or not. So I just hate to look at it that way. Personally, that's just mine.
No, and I get it. And, you and I gave some people a hard time on Twitter earlier when their first thought was going to the competitive advantage, disadvantage thing. And that even you and I have been kind of brought over to that side of the fence that, you know, if some of this stuff in the investigation is true and the Titans had just a complete disregard for the sanctity of what they're trying to do here, I'm okay with coming down pretty hard here. I do think those things need to be the focus, and the safety of the players, the ability to get this under control. Those are going to be the deciding making factors. The money, more than anybody likes to acknowledge, those are the things that are going to be factors. I'm not saying that competitive advantages and balance and fairness and equity are completely devoid of the situation. I don't think that it's completely removed.
Right.
Everybody needs to understand they're pretty far down the list of what is going to be this decision. If they can get it set where they feel like they can get Tennessee under control, where they can create a safe environment, and then they can squeeze this game in later on in the year in some scenario I don't currently see, because they already gave the Titans a bye week last week. I don't see how that's going to work. But if they do, they're going to play that game and they're going to find a way to fit it in, because they want that ad revenue. They want those marketing dollars. They want those sponsorship dollars. And they need it with a short cap this year. So I would anticipate that is much more likely. And that although a forfeit is on the table, it is a possibility. It is a absolute last resort for the NFL.
Yeah, no, money trumps everything with the NFL. And like you said, the revenue's not there like it was a year ago with everything that's gone on, and they're going to try to get milk as much of as they can. I mean, tomorrow's going to be the biggest indicator, right? Obviously, we know that if we wake up tomorrow, we're going to know first thing in the morning the tests that have come back here. It's hard for me to see any way that we're not going to see some positive test out of Tennessee with everything that's gone on and sort of the blatant disregard. So in my mind, I have a hard time seeing a scenario where the game gets played this week. But if it does, great, because I commented to Dell, like the hardest part of this, outside of once you remove the human element and people actually getting sick, and we got to keep in mind, I think everybody thinks of it just as these young elite athletes. A lot of this is staff personnel. We don't know.
Coaching, trainers.
You have older staff on a lot of teams, trainers, and who knows what those people's personal lives are like. But outside of that, I was saying to Dell, one of the hard things for me is it's been a rough year for everybody, man. Like, football coming back, I didn't even think we'd get football, but now that it's returned, it's been like the only piece of normalcy for not just me, so many fans, where all week long I have this to look forward to, and I can get back into my routine of making some delicious food and watching football all day and getting on here after the game with you and chatting. And then my week goes back to basically a terrible pandemic life, you know what I mean? Like, everything else is just back to the pandemic crazy lifestyle. But football returns some normalcy for us, and to lose that even this week with not expecting a bye is just kind of defeating. I just felt defeated today when I woke up. I really did, man. I want to see football. I think the Bills are going to go in and beat the crap out of the Titans. To be honest, I think that this offense is going to dominate that. I want to see that. I want to see more Josh Allen football. That's what I'm excited for. And to have it possibly taken away from us because of total disregard and selfishness is just so defeating right now, man.
Well, and on that note, let's not let this bombard our entire show today. We've got some fun elements. We want to talk about our friends over at West Her Automotive Group, and let's talk numbers. I've got a little quiz for you. I know they've been floating around, but I don't know if you've seen the entire. we do need to keep it straight up which side we're on. I want to see if you're aware of exactly what pace Josh Allen is on for the season. So we're at the quarter mark of the season, four games in. And if he were to keep this up, I was even a little startled when I put these numbers together to see how ridiculous it is. So I'm gonna give you your best guess. What do you think the number of passing yards are that Josh Allen is on pace for if he were to keep up this pace over 16 games?
First of all, I hate on pace, and you know that.
I do.
Damn you for putting me
It's
on the
extra
spot
fun.
to have to even talk about it. She's, I don't know, 5,500.
5304.
Okay.
So just short of the NFL record. Peyton Manning's NFL record is 5426. For anybody that's wondering, currently Dak Prescott's on pace for 6,700 passing yards to shatter the NFL record.
That's what happens when you're playing garbage time.
Yeah, correct. When every single game is garbage time. So from a touchdown standpoint, he's on pace for 48 passing touchdowns and 12 rushing touchdowns, and shattering the NFL record of 60 total touchdowns, 332 rushing yards, and I'll say technically on pace for 4 interceptions, even though he really hasn't had a real interception thus far. So just some unbelievable numbers, and I think you even saw after the 4th week of it, even some really staunch, anti Josh Allen people. Sam Monson came out today and had some fun with the Josh Allen apology form that's floated around Twitter. And even he kind of chalked it up and said, I never saw this coming, but I got to be honest, he's earned it. And that I apologize, Josh. I was wrong. You've made it. And that I've talked through with a couple of people that are really in tune with the underlying numbers in the metrics. And I got to tell Bills fans, there aren't any crazy red flag metrics that say, oh, he's going to regress back on this. And I guarantee that's why Monson came out today, is that all of the numbers there are pretty sustainable. They all match up. Like, it's not like he has these weird lucky things or that this is way out of line, so it's going to come back. All of them are in line with the kind of numbers he's putting up. There's not some weird anomaly that looks like it's going to come back. What he's doing right now looks really good, and that, all the pre-snap motion, all the play action, all the different things that they're doing to take these strategic deep shots and to still set up some of the easy passes. And they're introducing more screenplay, and they're doing everything we've been looking for years now. This is a dynamic passing offense that I don't think is going anywhere.
If anything, he's left stuff on the field.
Yeah.
Every week, he really has. When you watch the tape, there's plays left on the field, which is scary to think about, because we talked about some record-setting days for him personally, and there was meat on the bone when we ended those games. And I think, again, I hate on pace, but I really do. I felt pretty confident after I got into the film on the Titans. I like the Titans, and it's not about them. I have confidence in the way this offense is playing, and the confidence and swagger that Josh Allen's playing with. And I'm watching it. I'm taking my notes and looking, and the whole time I'm doing that, I'm thinking, Bills are going to drop 30 plus on this team. Like, I just think they are. I think there's some struggles that they're having in the secondary. I don't think they're the defense that they were at the second half of last year. I think they
gave up 30 to the Jags and Vikings.
Yeah, and I think they will be. I think they'll get it together at some point. They have the talent over there to do it. Maybe this is the week they get it together. I just don't think so. I think the Bills would come out with a great game plan, and I think they drop another 30. I think Josh Allen maintains this kind of pace with a close to or over 300-yard game and a couple touchdowns. Like, the confidence until they get punched in the mouth and have one of those days where somebody just slows them down. Maybe KC can do it. I think KC has enough firepower, and they can make enough big plays to really come out and punch you in the mouth. But until somebody does that, man, you're going to have a tough time talking me off that Josh Allen can't drop 30 on anyone any given Sunday.
Absolutely. I mean, we played some solid teams. That, the Raiders aren't a terrible defense. The Rams aren't a terrible defense. The Jets aren't anything special. The Dolphins defense has looked okay in the rest of their games. Like, there's a lot of stuff that was, that's just because they're playing terrible teams, but the teams we're playing look awful good against everybody else. The Rams have shut down a bunch of other teams and are 3-1. The Raiders beat the Saints. Everything else that we're seeing makes this much more legitimate than what I think a lot of people were hoping to poke holes in early on. And honestly, the thing I'm most mad about is that this was going to be great timing to play the Titans. I think that they were going to be shorthanded with a couple people. I'm not even talking about COVID.
Not about the COVID, right? Yeah,
just like, hey, they weren't going to have AJ Brown. There's some dings in their secondary, some other pieces that I thought we were going to be able to. Taylor Lewan isn't all the way back. It was going to be good timing from just a football standpoint to play them. And I thought it was going to be a great time to go in there and really lay it to an undefeated team that was going to get people's attention of how good this team was. And I'm frustrated that we lost that opportunity. that it was a chance to really have another statement game, 2 undefeated teams. And if the Bills went out there and laid the wood to this team on the road and started 5-0 for the first time since 1991, just for any fan who's not aware, we're 4-0 for the first time since 2008. We could have been 5-0, or still can be 5-0 for the first time since 1991. That would be amazing and would just be a fantastic way to start the season. So I'm frustrated that as of right now, I'm assuming they're going to take that from us and we're going to have some other weird scenario pop up.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that's mostly my most frustrating dude. I stayed up probably way too late for a guy with 2 little kids watching the Titans last night. And I just walked away getting ready to do the show thinking like, I'm going to put a big prediction out here and we're going to totally go down there and blow the doors off this team. And to have that possibly taken away is frustrating, but I think it just goes to the general consensus. Say it's KC coming up here next week. I think for the first time, I don't know how long, like if it is a shootout type scenario where we're getting to a game with the most high powered offense in football, like, okay, let's go. I think we can get into shootouts with teams. And that's insane, man. I've known you now for 3 years, and I don't think we've ever talked about that ever once. It's how do we hold teams to under 19 points?
Clock control, drag them down into the mud, needing to win the turnover differential. Yeah. Hopefully, if they miss some field goals, now it's I hope they can keep up. Good luck.
Yeah, let's go. Let's have a shootout.
So one other segment we wanted to go into here, and always a huge thank you to Uncle Jumbo's, and they've been such a gracious sponsor for us. Our Uncle Jumbo spotlight for tonight. Make sure you guys
should have been drinking Uncle Jumbo's all day.
Oh, Lord, I could have used it all day. It was
Tennessee could use some Uncle Jumbo's hand sanitizer.
Yeah, we could ship some of that down. I have some of that right here.
Seriously.
So make sure you guys check out UncleJumbosDistillery.com. I wanted to take this moment to kind of spotlight the secondary in that obviously there's a little bit unknown with Trey. Unfortunately, I know some fans were kind of hopeful that when we didn't hear about the IR movement with Levi Wallace yesterday, that maybe that meant it was shorter term. I got to tell you, I watched the video again, and when we watched it with Eric, he used the term that it looked floppy. It did not look good. I don't know that he for sure broke his lower leg and ankle. It did not look good, and that he could not put any pressure on it. And sometimes those lower ankle, the high ankle sprains are worse than breaking the bone.
Oh, you want to break it versus a certain grade sprain.
I think fans need to brace themselves that we may lose Levi Wallace for a healthy stretch here. I don't think this is a 2 or 3 week thing. We have no idea. That's pure speculation. I'm concerned that we may lose him for a while here. And the only reason that's not as big of a deal, I thought Josh Norman looked really solid. I thought that he looked really solid. I know some fans got maybe a little overexcited, but I even want to say part of the reason the fans were excited, obviously the peanut punch and all those kind of things are cool. I actually think the swagger and the energy and what he brings from just he knows where to be confident and to push and to try to make plays, and he knows where to push energy, and that kind of what he's not anywhere near Stephon Diggs level, but kind of what Stephon Diggs brings on offense. I heard this morning, Robert Mays and Nate Tice were talking about the Bills for a long time on the Athletic podcast. So if anybody wants to listen, they talked about the Bills a lot today. They talked about how, when you have a really good structure and a really good environment and guys who are all singing from the same songbook, sometimes it's not a bad thing to have a guy who's out there talking trash and getting that energy up and bringing some edge. And that I don't know that we had that outwardly on defense, or an obvious one that stood out.
Jerry's a loudmouth.
I haven't seen a ton of it this year. Obviously he has plenty, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think having that swagger is obviously not what a Levi Wallace is. I think Norman is very similar to him as a player, but maybe that energy and that swagger and that confidence brings a little bit extra that he didn't bring. And I thought that the first game at minimum was a positive step. Maybe not as awesome as people were trying to make it out to be, but a positive step from the disaster other people were predicting him to be.
Yeah, I think the best thing about this is I think they're all, Levi and Josh Norman at this point, Josh Norman's career, I think on the field are about even, maybe a coin flip. I agree with you. I think there's more swagger. I think he hits harder. I don't know that he's a better tackler. I think they're both pretty good tacklers. I think Levi
he did have a missed tackle or two. I'd argue it was two, but he for sure had one missed tackle.
Yeah, and I think they're both, for the most part, have been good tacklers throughout their careers here. So on the field, I think they're roughly the same. I do think fans went a little overboard here after the game. Like, that peanut punch was great. It was the turning point in the game. It turned the tide for sure. Huge play. I saw people talking about like, oh, he's a stud. He's going to return to form. I mean,
back to the brakes.
If I had
he's back to all pro form.
Yeah, I'm ready to pump the brakes on that. I think he'll be good though. I think he can step. This is a great thing about the depth and how seriously good Brandon Beane is at putting this roster together. I think that you lose your starting cornerback, who has been a starting quarterback here for 3 years. You lose him, and the drop off is none. There's no drop off, and maybe it's better. I don't know. We'll see as he gets tested here coming up. I think there's going to be some frustrations like there is with Levi, where I think it might be a little bit the opposite of Levi, where Josh jumps a route or two that he shouldn't, trying to make a play that he shouldn't, and gets beat on some things, or miscommunications. We're going to see maybe some of that because they haven't played together very long. They missed most of training camp. We haven't seen him playing with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. We haven't seen him passing off a lot to Taron Johnson. This is a zone-heavy defense that relies on communication. I mean, having a good vet's a huge part of that, so that's good for him. But I do want to urge fans that he's not. I don't know that he's a stud. I think that the drop off of having Levi hurt and then having Josh Norman come in is really good roster building by Brandon Beane. Now I'm a little concerned. You have an older guy in there, Cam Lewis coming back. I don't feel great about the depth after that. I really liked it when the idea of Josh Norman, Levi Wallace, Sierra Neal, Taron Johnson, like I felt like that was really good. But
Gaines early on.
EJ Gaines early on. It gets scary quick here. Not sure what the Bills are going to do if they're going to start seeing them bring anybody in. I think they would maybe bring some guys in for tryouts just to have some guys on speed dial. We saw Tremaine Johnson came in for a tryout a while back. We saw Prince Mukamura come in. So I think those guys are probably on speed dial just in case this gets a little hairy going forward.
They have to. I believe has a good question here. And for questions like this, Aaron and I always defer to Eric. He understands coverages better than anyone that I know.
Yeah.
And he thought that this was a communication issue, that it's cover 3, and cover 3 is a lot of communication. So one, the Raiders ran a really good route combination that made it hard and confused Micah Hyde and Trey White. It made it look like Josh Norman was trailing him, but really it was him coming over and giving up his third of the field that he was supposed to cover to try to help. It really was a miscommunication with Micah Hyde and Trey White, that Eric thought Trey was probably supposed to hand off the underneath to Micah Hyde and carry Aguilar over, but that they miscommunicated and both of them started to come short and they let Aguilar get behind them. So it wasn't like one guy got burned physically. It was a miscommunication that they let him get behind there. So I don't know. It was a blown coverage by the secondary. We don't know for sure. Eric thought that it was probably more on Trey than anybody else, but it was because of a miscommunication with Micah Hyde, not that one guy got toasted.
And that's when you're watching the game, that is what happens more times than not, especially in Buffalo, where it's a zone heavy team. If you're watching zone heavy teams and you see a guy just blast through and become wide open, it's usually a miscommunication. It's not some guy got burnt. And I think fans, when you see it on the broadcast, you're like, you see it happen with Stephon Gilmore a lot. And they play a lot of man, but most of the times he's getting burnt in New England, it's his own coverage and somebody's miscommunicating. We all get on Twitter and we're like, Stephon got burnt. But then you watch the L22 and really the safety should have been there, or there was a miscommunication handoff. So it does happen. And that's one of the things, like, Trey and Micah Hyde have been playing together for a while now, 3 years. They
fourth season together.
Yeah, we talk about the continuity, and they're still having communication issues. And I think that's really when you see the Bills struggle in a game, a lot of it comes down to that type of stuff and the fundamentals of it. So before you get on Twitter and start yelling at people during the game, just remember that it could be something else.
Yeah, and it's tough. We get it, and especially I get where people came from in the highlight that was there and the piece. When you did see it at the end, the last number you saw on the screen was 29 as it was going past. So I kept yelling at people. I'm like, no, I don't think that was Norman's guy. I'm like, Norman's over on the other side of the field, and Aguilar came from the left side, and it is what it is. But it's funny how quickly people get overconfident in their ability to break down coverage schemes off broadcast film. I got to tell you, I watch a ton of film. I still can't do 10% of what Eric does when he watches his stuff. So it's really tough to be able to make those judgments in real time off what you saw in a quick highlight.
Speaking of player spotlights, film, and Eric, we don't have to really talk about it, but I want people to go watch the video he did on Tremaine Edmunds, because I think that is a great something that I've learned probably the most from Eric is really to pump the brakes on stuff a little bit. When you're watching the game and you're frustrated with a guy and you're saying like, oh, Tremaine Edmunds sucks, and you're seeing the media guys pile on a guy. We've seen it here for years now. We saw Tre'Davious White get piled on by the media guys, and then fans took it and run with that. And you see it happen just week in and week out. But then when you actually pull it back a little bit, watch the film. And again, I hate saying that I watch film because I don't do it like Eric does. And I don't understand the scheme and what the technique, and that's really the big difference, I think, between a lot of people and what Eric does, is he understands the technique that these guys are being taught. And when he explains to you the technique and why it is that mistake is happening, I think you can kind of realize what the player is thinking in the moment. It's not that they suck or that they've regressed or anything like that. It's maybe a misunderstanding of the play and applying the wrong technique at the wrong time or something like that. So go check out the Tremaine Edmunds video that Eric did. And I think it explains a lot, and I think it'll give you faith that Tremaine Edmunds can fix a lot of this stuff moving forward, and it's not as bad as it looks, and that he's still going to be a stud middle linebacker, and he's only 22. So don't worry about him. I think he's going to be all right going forward. So go check out that video on the YouTube here after you watch this.
And just to let you guys know, Eric's very even-handed with that. He starts out in the video letting you know that it
wasn't good.
It hasn't been great, but he'll explain why maybe it's not as terrible as what you think, and he'll explain what areas have been strong and what areas he struggled in. And I think that's really what's valuable, is that anybody can go and like just blow smoke and tell you everybody's great, and other people make a living off of telling you that everybody sucks and everybody's terrible and only are going to be cynical about everything. Eric's really good at being honest and even-handed with his breakdowns.
And I will say, the people that just say everybody stinks, when I did the scouting academy, Louis Riddick, there was a video that he was in, and that's the first thing he said. He said, that's the easy thing, right? When scouts talk about what a guy can't do, anybody can look at tape and tell you what a guy can't do. Tell me what a guy can do, and then, like Eric, find the reasons why he's not doing the things. Don't just harp on the negative. So if you see somebody that's just harping on the negative, ignore it. They're not your guy.
So a couple questions we'll wrap up here before we close out. Mark Ponicello just asking, do we see any trade deadlines or moves here with the depth questions on the Bills secondary linebacker group? I'm not expecting it. Don't get me wrong. I'd love if they go out and pick up, Miles Jack from the Jaguars, or I've seen there's a couple people. There's a name, Josh Jackson was thrown out there from Green Bay that's not getting a lot of run, was an early round pick, is a long-limbed zone corner that's in a man scheme. That was an interesting one. So that's the only one I've seen thrown out there that's on a cheap contract and is a much better fit for us than he is for Green Bay, and is not getting snaps in Green Bay. And that's the kind of guy you would target. It's not going to be some big money, big name player that people are clamoring for. It would be someone like that isn't getting snaps for another team, is on a cheap contract, is a good scheme fit. So I'll throw that name out there. And I think it was maybe Chris Trapasso that threw that out there. So Josh Jackson from the Green Bay Packers is a cornerback, I think is a name you can keep an eye out for. I would assume it's 90-10 that we don't make any trade, and that it would be maybe a Tremaine Johnson or a Prince Amukamara coming in, someone like that, or Darren Lee. They brought him in from a linebacker spot for a workout. I think his 4-game suspension might be up now. So some pieces like that would be much more likely than a big trade.
Yeah, I can't see a trade just with the unknowns of the season right now and the reduced cap next year. And Brandon Beane is going to need picks more than ever coming up. That's something you and I talked about the other day offline, that as we come up into that salary cap starting to tighten up, Brandon Beane's had a great success rate with picks, even though this year people are getting mad already that they're not all panning out. I think they will here over time, but he's had a really good success rate when you look league wide at success rate for your picks. So he's going to need those because we're going to have to continue to replenish this depth because they're going to lose guys here coming up. So I don't see any necessarily big trades. I agree with you, though. I think they will look to free agency here, especially with Milano. If that is, that maybe something we didn't even talk about here when McDermott said week to week, I totally panicked because it's
never good.
Yeah, it's not good. And obviously that's good if they're not playing the Titans this week. That's one of the week to weeks that isn't an impact on the field, but it's not good going forward because that could be 3 weeks. That could be a month. Like we don't know. And there's a lot of other things to unpack with that with Matt Milano, but that's a scenario where I do like Terrell Dotson. I don't like Klein very much right now. So I don't know if you bring in a Darren Lee as some type of backup role to Dotson. If Milano's
he's much more similar to Dotson than to Klein. So
yeah,
Darren Lee is another like kind of safety, kind of
undersized
sideline to sideline guy. He's a poor man's Milano. He's not anywhere near that level. So the question Taylor asked here, do we continue to let Klein play in coverage or do we use Dotson? I will say it looked pretty clear that after Milano went out, the one snap, it was immediately Klein, but the next drive they came in and it was Milano. It was Dotson playing for Milano. So it seems like it would be Dotson alongside Edmunds and then Klein as a third linebacker, which he's been all year, which is fine. That is what it is. That's the best we've got right now. And Klein is fine in run downs. There, the issue was Vegas was putting in their fullback to isolate Klein in coverage and just putting their fullback out wide, which is a problem. So getting to that point has been a challenge, but it does look like Dotson would be there, and bringing in a guy like Darren Lee would give them one more athletic linebacker to have an option to be able to do that if a team was going very pass heavy.
Yeah, and you'll see Klein. I think you will here in the next few weeks. Yeah, he's going to play. He'll be in coverage at times, but I do think you'll start to see more of those snaps going to Dotson. I even saw somewhere, I don't remember the source offhand on Twitter, that on the unofficial or official depth chart that Terrell Dotson was above Klein, which I don't know. I'll have to check after the show, but we'll see. That would make sense to me from what I'm seeing on film. So
a really good question from Alexander Strong. If anyone wants a thread of hope to hold on to that Brian Daboll does not get a head coaching job, it's going to be because Eric Bieniemy, maybe who's the Oklahoma college coach that everybody likes? I don't know college football.
I don't
somebody will tell me in the chat here in a minute. Or Greg Roman get a job, and the other one will be that dumb retreads get a job instead. In the most perfect world scenario would be that Adam Gase gets the job in Houston and Bill O'Brien gets the job in New York, and that saves us another season of keeping Brian Daboll as our offensive coordinator. So what's shocking is I didn't make either of those things up. That wasn't a joke. I've heard both of them reported as potential fill-ins, that it was reported by Houston folks that there is interest in bringing Adam Gase to Houston, and out of New York that there is interest in Bill O'Brien coming into the Jets, which would just be fantastic. So our friends in the chat help me with Lincoln Riley. I don't know college football all that well. I'm like March Madness. Like I don't pay attention to college basketball until the week before when I have to fill out my bracket. I don't know any college football outside of like a huge game that happens every once in a while, and then I cram for the draft like the 3 weeks before.
Yeah, I do right at the end of February. I started draft cramming.
Yeah,
that's where I learn everything about college football.
That's all I got. So we'll go through here. Maybe one more question. Does Frazier get a job before Daboll?
He should. He should.
If being the right leader and the right man, was the criteria, I'd hope so.
And having success with his unit for a longer period of time. Yeah.
I would hope that would be an option, and that I will say maybe there's a sliver of hope that all of this pandemic stuff and the teams that have leadership and structure and a true point man leading out front will give a coach a reason to do that. I will say the biggest reason that I think teams will continue to lean on the offensive side is what we're experiencing right now with Brian Daboll, is that we have a great head coach. I am the biggest Sean McDermott apologist that exist. I will defend him to the end of the year. I say over and over again, Sean McDermott is the single most valuable asset in the Pagula portfolio. The challenge with that is he's a defensive mastermind. I think that he's a great defensive coach. He's the reason I feel confident in this defense going forward. Unfortunately, if you stumble across a good offensive mind, they're going to get plucked for other jobs, and you're going to have to continue to bring in new offensive play callers. If you have an Andy Reid or a Kyle Shanahan or a Sean Payton, where they are the centerpiece of your franchise and your play caller or your offensive scheme guy, unfortunately, it makes it a little bit more sustainable. So I wouldn't trade Sean McDermott for the world. I would not give him up for just about any coach. Maybe I wouldn't give him up for any coach, but I get it that there is a challenge with having offensive guys and the reason that that's going to come up. So
offense is sexier. And
it is.
When you have a lot of the teams, like you look at teams right now that have quarterbacks without possible coaches in Gase and Houston, they're going to get somebody in there to try to fix the offense, I think. And, hashtag says it, the offensive guys do. They just do go faster. It's true. But I think the Bills have taken care of Frazier and making him an assistant head coach. They gave him a raise here this last year. So I think they see it. I think that they're probably shocked that they were able to keep him again here for another year. But it's a matter of limited jobs. And then you get all these, everybody, you said it the other day, everyone got together and decided Cliff Kingsbury was going to be the next hot thing. And Leslie Frazier probably should have had an NFL head coaching job ahead of him.
He absolutely should have got that job.
But yeah, 100%. But the offensive guys get sexy, some college guys get sexy, and then your Leslie Fraziers just kind of slide off and stay where they're at.
Yeah. One last question here, Isaiah Spencer. And this has been a good question that's come up when we're talking about replacing Matt Milano. Where is Tyler Matakevich? Tyler Matakevich is Tywan Jones.
Yeah,
Tyler Matakevich is a linebacker, like Tywan Jones is a running back.
Yeah.
If Tyler Matakevich is playing linebacker on the field, things have gone very, very wrong. We're in deep, deep trouble. He's an awesome special teams player. He's genuinely good. I've noticed him several times. He's playing his role really well. We do not want him playing linebacker, just like we do not want Tywan Jones playing running back. They are there to be special teams players, and that's it.
I'd rather have Tywan Jones playing running back than Matakevich playing.
Well, we saw it in the playoff game, sadly, last year, that technically he can't take a screenplay down.
Yeah, he had like two nice runs a couple years ago for the Bills.
Yeah. So, all right, we appreciate it very much, guys. Great show tonight. Aaron, tell the people where they can find you.
I don't want to. No, you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716 and in Greg's mentions, as always.
Very often. Come find me at Greg Tompsett, GregTompsett. Thank you very much to our sponsors, West Her. Thank you to Uncle Jumbo's. Appreciate Christian Page with the technical difficulties earlier. Appreciate the chat tonight. You guys were fantastic. You guys have been listening to Cover One Buffalo.